What if I told you that the person who destroys everything you thought you knew about yourself is a crying child with frosting on her face, holding a cupcake at a wedding you didn't want to attend? This is the true story of Jin Seok-ho, a man who ruled Seoul's most dangerous criminal empire with calculated violence and ice-cold precision. And Amanda Pauli, a black single mother society, had already written off as just another statistic. One impossible moment at an outdoor wedding reception that shattered both their carefully built walls and rewrote their destinies forever. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll understand why the most dangerous men don't fear death. They fear the moment someone makes them feel again. You'll see why our greatest blessings come disguised as interruptions we almost ignored. And you might just realize that the person standing in front of you right now is waiting for you to finally see them. This is a story about unexpected redemption, the deadly cost of pride, and the kind of love that ambushes you when you've convinced yourself you don't deserve it. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us your thoughts on the story and where you're watching from. Let's get started. The outdoor reception sprawled across the manicured gardens of the Shilla Hotel like a carefully staged photograph. White silk pavilions caught the late afternoon sun, while Seoul's most powerful men pretended they weren't watching Jin Seok-ho's every move. They smiled over champagne flutes and spoke in measured tones about market opportunities and real estate ventures, but their eyes betrayed them. Fear had a particular quality in sunlight. It glistened like sweat on expensive cologne. Jin stood near the koi pond, his tailored Tom Ford suit worth more than most of these people earned in a month. Beside him, Councilman Park rambled about zoning approvals and construction permits, his voice pitched slightly too high. The man's hands trembled as he lifted his glass. Jin had that effect on people. 20 years of building the Viper Syndicate had taught him that fear was more valuable than respect, more reliable than loyalty. "The contracts will be ready by Thursday," Park said, forcing enthusiasm into words that tasted like ash. "Your investment in the Gangnam development will yield—" The sound cut through everything. A child's cry. Raw, desperate, the kind of sound that didn't belong at a reception where even grief wore designer labels. The string quartet faltered for half a measure before continuing their Vivaldi. Conversations paused, then resumed with forced brightness. People turned their backs toward the sound with the practiced ease of those who'd learned to ignore inconvenient realities. Jin turned instead. She stood at the dessert table, a small black girl in a pink dress that seemed to glow against her dark skin. Perhaps 4 years old, maybe 5. Her face was contorted with the absolute devastation only children could achieve, tears streaming down her cheeks as she clutched a chocolate cupcake with both hands. The frosting smeared across her fingers like evidence of some small crime. No one moved toward her. 2 waiters exchanged glances and walked the other direction. A woman in Chanel sunglasses literally stepped around the sobbing child to reach the macarons. Jin felt his legs moving before his mind caught up. His bodyguards, Kim and Lee, stiffened in confusion. In 20 years, they'd never seen him approach anyone who wasn't a business associate, a threat, or about to become a corpse. He knelt down on the immaculate grass, his $1,000 suit pressing against the earth. This close, he could see the cupcake trembling in her small hands, chocolate frosting melting in the heat. The girl looked up at him with eyes wide and wet, and absolutely terrified. "I can't find my mommy," she whispered. The world collapsed inward. Jin was 5 years old again, sitting on a bench at Nambu Terminal with a backpack his father had packed that morning. Waiting, watching every face that passed. Certain the next one would be his father returning from the bathroom, from buying tickets, from wherever he'd gone. The terminal had emptied as night fell. The janitors had swept around him, and still he'd waited. Jin crouched down to the girl's level, his expensive suit jacket pooling on the polished floor. Up close, he could see the tear tracks cutting through the dust on her cheeks, the way her small hands trembled as she clutched that worn, stuffed rabbit. "What's your name?" he asked softly. Lily," she hiccuped, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Lily Peterson." "Lily." Jin kept his voice gentle, though something sharp twisted in his chest at the sight of her fear. "Where was your mother when you last saw her?" Fresh tears spilled down Lily's face. "She said she had to check something by the cars. She said she'd be right back, but she didn't come back." Her voice cracked on the last word, rising into a wail that made several nearby guests glance over with disapproval. Jin felt his jaw tighten involuntarily. He recognized that particular brand of terror, the desperate, world-ending fear of a child who'd been left before. He'd worn that same expression once, a lifetime ago, waiting by a hospital room door that never opened. "How long ago was that?" he asked. "I don't know," Lily sobbed. "A really long time. I waited and waited where she told me, but then people started looking at me funny, so I came inside to find help. But everyone's so busy and... Hey." Jin took her small hand in his, surprised by how cold her fingers felt. "I'm not too busy. We're going to find your mother, okay?" He stood, keeping Lily's hand firmly in his, and snapped his fingers once. The sharp sound cut through the ambient noise of the gala. His head of security, Marcus Chen, materialized at his elbow within seconds. "Yes, sir?" "Find this child's mother, now." Jin's voice dropped into the commanding tone that had negotiated billion-dollar deals. "Her name is Amanda Peterson. Search the entire venue and parking area. Deploy everyone if you need to." Marcus's eyes widened slightly, the only sign of surprise he'd show, before he nodded crisply. "Right away, Mr. Park." As Marcus spoke rapidly into his earpiece, coordinating the search, Jin turned his attention back to Lily. He guided her to a quiet corner away from the main flow of guests, settling onto a bench and pulling her to sit beside him. "Tell me about your mom," he said gently. "What does she look like?" Lily's hands were still shaking, but she reached into her small purse, barely more than a child's play accessory, and pulled out a disposable camera. With fumbling fingers, she scrolled through the digital preview screen until she found a photo. Jin took the camera carefully. The image showed a woman in her early 30s with tired eyes and a warm smile, wearing what looked like a diner uniform. She had Lily's same brown hair, pulled back in a practical ponytail. "She's pretty," Jin said truthfully. "She works really hard," Lily whispered. "She didn't even want to come tonight, but her boss made everyone come because it's such a big fancy event." Something cold settled in Jin's stomach. He looked at the photo again, at that uniform, at the exhaustion behind the smile. He met Lily's frightened eyes and made a promise he intended to keep, no matter what it took. "We'll find her. I give you my word." Jin's phone vibrates in his hand, the screen lighting up with his security chief's name. He answers before the second ring. "We found her. Parking lot, service entrance. She's unconscious. Paramedics are on site." The words hit him like a physical blow. His vision narrows, the opulent lobby suddenly feeling miles away from where he needs to be. He looks down at the girl still clutching his leg, her small fingers twisted in the expensive fabric of his suit pants, and feels his chest constrict. He kneels again, bringing himself to her eye level. His voice comes out steadier than he feels. "Your mother is sick. She needs to go to the hospital. I'm going to take you to her." The girl's eyes go wide, filling with a terror so pure it threatens to undo him completely. Is she going to die? The question slams into him with devastating precision. He's 7 years old again, standing in a sterile hospital corridor, asking his father the exact same thing, watching his father's face crumble, hearing words that meant nothing and everything at once. Jin's throat tightens until breathing becomes a conscious effort. He reaches out, his hand hovering near her shoulder before settling there gently. "No, I won't let that happen." He carries her through the hotel's service corridors, his long strides eating up the distance. Staff members press themselves against walls as he passes, their CEO transformed into something they've never seen before. A man running toward crisis instead of away from it. The parking lot is chaos contained. Paramedics surround a gurney where Amanda lies motionless, her skin the color of old paper, her uniform still perfectly pressed despite everything. The professional calm of the medical team does nothing to slow Jin's racing heart. "Severe exhaustion," one paramedic explains, checking Amanda's vital signs with practiced efficiency. "Dehydration. Blood pressure's dangerously low. Hypoglycemic. Looks like she hasn't eaten in over 24 hours. 24 hours. Jin's mind catalogs the timeline with brutal clarity. She worked a double shift, sent her daughter to the break room with crackers, because there was nothing else. Kept cleaning, kept moving, kept working until her body simply gave up. They lift the gurney into the ambulance, and Jin watches Amanda's pale face disappear behind chrome and medical equipment. Something inside him, something he thought died 15 years ago in another hospital, watching his mother's light fade, cracks open. Not breaks. Cracks. Like ice over deep water, revealing darkness he's spent years learning to ignore. The girl whimpers beside him, and Jin realizes he's still holding her. Her small body trembles against his chest, and he tightens his grip instinctively, protectively. "We're going with them," he tells the paramedic. Not a request. The man glances at his partner, then nods. Jin climbs into the ambulance with Amanda's daughter in his arms, and the doors slam shut behind them. Jin's Mercedes cut through Seoul traffic like a silent blade, the city lights blurring past the tinted windows. The girl sat rigid in the passenger seat, her small hands clenched in her lap, tears still tracking down her cheeks despite her desperate attempts to stop them. "I'm sorry," she whispered for the third time. "I'm getting your nice car all messy." Jin glanced at her, this tiny warrior who'd been holding the world on her shoulders. "The car will survive." The words opened something in her. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or the relief of finally being with someone who could help. But suddenly everything came spilling out in broken sentences between ragged breaths. "We got an eviction notice last week. The landlord said we have 14 days. Her voice cracked. "Mommy works 3 jobs now. She leaves before I wake up and comes home after I'm asleep. Sometimes I only see her on Sundays." Jin's jaw tightened, but he kept his eyes on the road. "We eat cereal for dinner most nights," the girl continued, her words tumbling faster now. "The kind that's on sale. Mommy says it's fun, like breakfast for dinner, but I know it's because there's nothing else. She thinks I don't notice when she doesn't eat at all, just watches me and says she already ate at work." The traffic light ahead turned red. Jin eased the car to a stop, the silence suddenly heavy. "She always says, poly women don't break, we bend." The girl's voice dropped to barely a whisper. but I think we're bending too much. I think we might break anyway." Then, softer still, almost lost. "Mommy's gonna be so mad at herself. She says we can't ever fall apart. She says that's what rich people want, for us to fall apart so they can feel better about everything." Jin's hands tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles going white. The words hit him like a physical blow, dragging up a memory he'd buried deep. His mother at their tiny kitchen table, her face gray with exhaustion, saying those exact words before heading out to her night shift at the factory. 3 days later, her heart had given out. She was 34. "Crying when you're scared doesn't mean you're falling apart," Jin said quietly, surprised by the roughness in his own voice. "It means you're human." The girl looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since getting in the car. "Your mother's wrong about one thing," Jin continued as the light turned green. "Asking for help isn't weakness, it's survival." He pressed the accelerator, and the Mercedes surged forward toward Asan Medical Center, carrying its precious cargo through the Seoul night. Amanda's eyes opened to sterile white light and the steady beep of a heart monitor. Her head felt thick, her limbs heavy. The antiseptic smell hit her before the panic did. Then she saw them, Jin sitting perfectly still in the corner chair, and Maya curled up against him, asleep. The IV line caught her attention. Her gaze followed it from her arm to the bag hanging above the bed, and something inside her snapped. She sat up too fast, the room spinning, and reached for the tape holding the needle in place. Her fingers fumbled with it, clumsy and desperate. "I can't afford this." Her voice came out raw. "I have to leave. I have a shift in 3 hours." Jin rose from the chair in one smooth motion, his hand catching her wrist before she could pull the IV free. "You're not going anywhere." His voice was low, hard, absolutely final. Amanda stared at him, her chest heaving. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." He released her wrist, but didn't step back. Maya stirred against the chair but didn't wake. Jin's jaw tightened, and for a moment he looked somewhere past Amanda, into something she couldn't see. "My mother died when I was 12. The words came out cold, precise. Heart failure. She worked 3 jobs, refused help from anyone, and told herself she was strong enough to carry everything alone. Amanda's hand fell to her lap. She wasn't. Jin's eyes refocused on her, and there was something terrible in them. Grief calcified into stone. And by the time I understood what was happening, it was too late. The monitor beeped steadily between them. I watched her collapse in our kitchen. I called the ambulance myself. I sat in a hospital room just like this one while doctors told me there was nothing they could do. That if she'd come in sooner, if she'd accepted help, if she hadn't waited until her body was shutting down. He stopped. His hands were clenched at his sides. When he spoke again, his voice dropped to something absolutely zero. You're no good to your daughter dead. Amanda felt the words hit her like a physical blow. So you're going to sit in this bed, accept treatment, and let me pay the bill. It wasn't a request. It wasn't even a command. It was simply what was going to happen, delivered with the same cold certainty he'd used to fire executives and restructure departments. Amanda opened her mouth to argue, to tell him she didn't need his charity, that she could handle this herself. But the words died in her throat when she looked at Maya's sleeping face. Jin followed her gaze. Don't make your daughter learn what I learned, he said quietly. Don't make her sit at your funeral and wonder if you'd still be alive if you'd just accepted help when it was offered. Amanda's eyes burned. She looked down at her hands, at the IV line she'd been trying to tear out, and felt something inside her finally break. 2 days crawled by, in that sterile hospital room. Amanda's vitals stabilized, her body grudgingly accepting rest it had been denied for too long. But while her heartbeat grew steady, the financial nightmare sharpened into focus. The hospital bill alone would devour what little she'd managed to save. The apartment rent was overdue. Mrs. Kim had been watching Lily out of kindness. But that kindness had limits. Amanda sat propped against pillows, staring at nothing, when Jin walked in carrying a leather portfolio instead of flowers. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You're being discharged tomorrow." "I know." "Then you need to see this." He set the portfolio on her lap. Amanda opened it slowly, her fingers still weak. Inside was a formal contract on embossed paper, the Viper Hospitality Group logo gleaming at the top. Her eyes skimmed the words, then stopped. Went back. Read again. Director of Events. Annual salary, $150 million. Approximately $115,000 USD. Full health benefits. Performance bonuses. Immediate access to executive housing. She looked up at him, suspicion hardening every line of her face. "Why?" "Because you're qualified." "No." Amanda's voice cut like glass. "Men like you don't do this without wanting something. What do you really want?" Jin didn't flinch. He pulled up a chair, sat down, and met her eyes with that same unnerving directness. "You're right. I want something." Amanda's entire body tensed. Here it came. The real price, the hidden clause, the reason behind the expensive suit and calculated generosity. "I want you to stop killing yourself." She blinked. "I want your daughter to have a mother who's alive to raise her, and I want to stop watching strong women destroy themselves because they're too proud to accept help." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to something raw and honest. "My mother worked herself to death rather than ask for support. I watched her collapse at a kitchen sink, surrounded by other people's dirty dishes, because she believed accepting help meant admitting defeat." Amanda's throat tightened. "Your talent is worth this salary," Jin continued. "You orchestrated a flawless event on impossible resources. But even if you weren't talented, I'd still make this offer." His eyes held hers. "Pride is a luxury you can't afford right now. Don't make my mother's mistake." The contract felt heavy in Amanda's lap. Her whole life, she'd fought to prove she didn't need anyone, that she could survive anything alone. But Lily's face floated through her mind. Those worried eyes, that small hand clutching hers. Amanda looked down at the contract again, at the numbers that could change everything. Her hand trembled as she reached for the pen. The social worker caught Amanda in the hallway outside Soo Jin's room, her expression gentle but firm. "That man paid your entire bill," she said quietly. "He didn't ask for anything in return. He didn't even wait for you to wake up." She paused, watching Amanda's face carefully. "Whatever you think his motives are, I saw the way he looked at your daughter. That was real." Amanda stood frozen, her mind fighting against the words. She'd spent her entire adult life building walls, relying on no one, trusting nothing that seemed too good to be true. Help always came with strings attached. Kindness always had a price. That's what experience had taught her. But the social worker's words wouldn't stop echoing in her head. That was real. She sat alone in Soo Jin's hospital room that night, watching her daughter sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks. The IV drip that had saved her life. The monitoring equipment tracking her recovery. The specialists who had rushed to her bedside. All of it paid for by a man who owed her nothing. Amanda pulled out her phone 3 times before finally pressing Jin's number. "I'll take the job," she said when he answered, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "But I'm going to earn every one of that salary. I don't accept charity." Jin's response was measured, calm. "Good. I don't give charity. I invest in people who deserve it." He paused. "The only condition is that you stay healthy and whole. Your daughter needs you." 2 weeks later, Amanda stood in the doorway of a beautiful corporate apartment in Gangnam, Soo-jin clinging to her hand. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating hardwood floors and modern furniture that looked like something from a magazine. It was more space than they'd ever had, in a neighborhood she'd only seen from bus windows. Soo-jin's eyes went wide. "Yama, is this really ours?" Amanda swallowed hard. "Yes, baby. This is home now." On her first day at Viper Hospitality Group, Amanda arrived 30 minutes early, her hands smoothing down the professional clothes Jin's assistant had arranged to be delivered. She'd barely slept, running through everything she needed to prove, everything she had to earn. Jin met her in the lobby personally, extending a company tablet toward her. "You belong here," he said simply, his eyes holding hers. "Prove me right." Amanda took the tablet, feeling its weight in her hands. Not the weight of obligation or debt, but the weight of opportunity, of possibility. She looked at Jin and nodded once, firmly. "I will." And she did. Amanda's first 4 months at Lee International became the kind of transformation story Jin's board would cite in quarterly reports for years. The events division, once bleeding money and relevance, surged back to life under her direction. Revenue climbed 40%. Client retention hit record highs. Trade publications began mentioning Lee International's events arm in the same breath as industry leaders. But Jin noticed something else entirely. He noticed how his pulse quickened when Amanda walked into morning meetings with coffee stains on her sleeve and ideas that rewrote entire strategies. He noticed how conference calls felt less tedious when she sat across from him, her pen tapping against her notebook in that rhythm he'd memorized without meaning to boom. He noticed how empty his penthouse felt on nights when she'd already gone home to Lily, and how he'd find himself checking his watch, calculating when he might reasonably see her again. Professional boundaries had never challenged him before. Now they felt like prison walls. The charity gala arrived on a crisp October evening, one of those events Jin normally endured rather than enjoyed. But this time, standing in his dressing room with his bow tie crooked in his hands, he made a decision that had nothing to do with business strategy. He called Amanda. "Attend with me tonight, not as my employee, as my date." The silence stretched so long he thought she'd hung up. "Jin, please." That single word carried 4 months of restraint. She came. The ballroom glittered with Seoul's elite, but Jin saw only Amanda in her midnight blue gown, moving through the crowd with that same fierce grace she'd shown standing up in a hospital bed despite 2 broken ribs. When the orchestra began playing, he didn't ask permission. He simply took her hand and led her onto the dance floor. Under the crystal chandeliers, with her hand in his and the world reduced to the space between their bodies, Jin finally let truth replace caution. "I didn't offer you that job just because of your talent," he said quietly. "I offered it because the moment I saw you fight to stand up in that hospital bed, I knew I'd never meet anyone stronger, and I haven't stopped thinking about you since." Amanda's breath caught. He watched something shift in her eyes, those walls she'd built so carefully beginning to crack. "I swore I'd never depend on anyone again after my daughter's father left," she whispered. "But you scare me because I'm starting to trust you." Jin cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Then trust me, I'm not going anywhere. When their lips met, the ballroom disappeared. There was only this, only truth, finally allowed to exist outside the careful boundaries they'd maintained. Only the beginning of something neither professional success nor past wounds could define. Only them. 6 months had transformed their lives in ways Amanda never imagined possible. Jin wasn't just around. He was present in every moment that mattered. He sat at the kitchen table helping with math homework, his patient explanations turning frustration into understanding. He showed up at school events, standing among the other parents like he'd always belonged there. He taught her daughter Korean phrases during their weekend breakfasts, laughing when she mispronounced the words, celebrating when she got them right. He'd woven himself into the fabric of their daily existence so seamlessly that Amanda sometimes forgot there was ever a time before him. One quiet evening, as Jin tucked her daughter into bed, the little girl looked up at him with those serious eyes that reminded Amanda so much of herself. "Mommy," she said later, appearing in Amanda's doorway in her pajamas. "Could Mr. Jin be my daddy? Like, for real?" Amanda's vision blurred instantly. She pulled her daughter close, unable to find words that matched the enormity of what she felt. The following weekend, Jin drove them to his private estate, a place he'd kept separate from their relationship until now. The grounds stretched out like something from a dream, but Amanda barely noticed. She was watching Jin kneel in front of her daughter, his hands gentle on her small shoulders. "I have something important to ask you," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion Amanda could see in his eyes. "Would you let me adopt you? Would you let me be your father?" Her daughter launched herself into his arms, her small body shaking with sobs. "Does this mean you'll never leave?" Jin held her like she was made of something precious and irreplaceable. "Never. I promise you. Never." When he finally looked up at Amanda, still holding her daughter, he pulled out a small velvet box. "And will you marry me?" Amanda nodded, tears streaming down her face, her voice lost somewhere in the depths of her joy. The adoption papers were signed in July. Official and binding and real. They married in September, in a ceremony so intimate, it felt like a secret they were sharing with only the people who mattered most. At the reception, Amanda's daughter stood on a chair to give her toast, her voice breaking as she spoke. "Thank you to my dad for being the dad who stayed." Later that night, alone in their room, Amanda traced her fingers along Jin's jaw. "Do you think we saved each other?" Jin shook his head slowly, catching her hand and pressing it to his heart. "No, we chose each other. Every single day. And we'll keep choosing each other. That's what makes us unbreakable."